Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dominic from the channel Dominic Talks Movies, the best place to talk movies, and today I'm doing my monthly What I Watched, and for this one I'm going to be doing it in a tier list / ranking. So first I'm going to put them into a tier list, and then at the very end I'll give you my full quick ranking. So if that sounds interesting, let's get right into the video. So as you can see here, we got the What I Watched in March tier list maker right here on tiermaker.com. Not sponsored, but I mean, you guys definitely know this website. It's got the basic tiers. You got S, A, B, C, D. You know, I'm going to kind of do it generally if two movies have the same rating, but I like one more than the other. You know, they might be in different tiers. So basically, given that, just know that this is not necessarily like some set in stone, anything like that. Things may be a little weird and things may seem off, but at the end of the day, it's just my opinion, how I feel about the movie. So with that being said, let's get into it. So these are not actually sorted by the date that I watched them in, but yeah, that's fine. You guys just have to know that these are all the movies I watched this month. I excluded Fantastic Mr. Fox and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse because those are two that are like solidified as two of my like top 5 favorite movies of all time. So I figured I watch Fantastic Mr. Fox like once a month always. So I figured I'm gonna exclude it from like most of these videos because it would always be at the top. It would always be number one in all the rankings, and I just feel like that wouldn't be fair for some other movies, so that some of these other movies could get number one. And then Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I don't watch that every month, but you know, it would be number one pretty easily out of these movies. So yeah, with that being said, I think all of these, if not like 90% of them, are all first watches. So let's hop right into the tier list, starting off right here with 12 Monkeys, directed by Terry Gilliam. I don't really know how to pronounce his name. This was a really interesting movie. I was definitely, I knew going in that his style was very strange and kind of weird, and this is a film that it definitely delivered that strange, weird kind of vibe. It was honestly really interesting, but at the same time I felt like it was a little dragged a little bit at points. It was definitely a good movie, don't get me wrong. Some of the technical aspects and like the imagery and stuff was definitely really good, but at the end of the day, a lot of it was kind of boring, and that's basically a cardinal sin of film, but it wasn't bad, so I'm going to throw it in the B tier for now. That's kind of my benchmarker. I'll kind of go off of that. Might move some things at the end, but for now, it's staying 12 Monkeys in the B tier. Next up, we got BlacKkKlansman. This is my third Spike Lee movie that I've seen, and I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I love Spike Lee, but this one was definitely a little bit disappointing. It was pretty boring for a lot of the time. There was some really interesting parts for sure, had some good acting, had a pretty solid screenplay for the most part, but the two main issues that I had with it was that it was slow and a little boring at times, and B, it didn't really feel like a Spike Lee movie. You know, there was only times where you would be like, okay, this is a Spike Lee movie, but the other two movies that I saw, like She's Gotta Have It and Do the Right Thing, those were like unapologetically Spike Lee heavy style films, and this one just wasn't. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but coming from Spike Lee, when you know the guy and his personality, and he's kind of just outrageous and out there and flamboyant and kind of like crazy and energetic, you'd expect him to be unapologetically himself in all of his movies, and you kind of want that from him because that's his personality. But this just did not bring that, in my opinion. So for now, I think I'm gonna throw it in the C tier. Again, I might switch things around once we get deeper into the tier list, but let's move on for now. Next up, we have Blue Velvet from David Lynch. This was my second David Lynch film. technically. It's been a while since I saw Eraserhead. I'm gotta rewatch that if I'm gonna do a David Lynch ranking in the future, which I will, but I'm not too sure when that's gonna come out. But yeah, Blue Velvet was definitely super critically acclaimed from what I've seen going into it. I went in with high hopes, and I feel like that was kind of its downfall. Do not get me wrong, it was a good, really good film still, really interesting, didn't really overstay its welcome at all. It was really weird at times, but that's kind of just David Lynch, and I think it worked well. I do like it a bit more than 12 Monkeys, but right now I'm not too sure if I'm ready to put it in A tier, so I think I'm gonna put it in B tier for now. And let's just move on, I guess. Next up, we have Charlie Chaplin's City Lights. This was a really, really good movie. I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of Charlie Chaplin. Basically, everyone acknowledges his influence to cinema and filmmaking, and I'm definitely one of those, but I'm also someone who thinks that, like, I just personally really love his movies. I know a lot of people give them high scores because they're well made and they're influential, but I give them high scores because of that and because I just absolutely have a good time with them. City Lights was, in my opinion, probably the best mixture of comedy and drama so far out of all of his films. You could argue that because most of his films have a really good balance of that, but this had very set in stone comedy, very set in stone drama, but they worked well together at times. And it was overall just a really well crafted, funny, dramatic film that I actually really, really liked. This one's going into the A tier. Next up, we have Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels. This is one that I've seen not too many people have watched, at least in my experience. The one that I know has watched it, that I got the idea to watch it from, is Karsten Runquist. He absolutely loved this movie, so I'm like, I tend to share some opinions with Karsten, so I'm like, hey, might as well watch this. I wanted to expand my horizons. I want to watch more foreign films even than I do now, because even in the critic community, I'm known as sort of the foreign film guy, but I still want to watch more than I do now. Regardless, Fallen Angels was absolutely amazing. This was one of my favorite watches of the month. That is going straight into the S tier. Next up, we have Fantastic Planet. This was a very weird, strange, and kind of disturbing movie. This gave me pretty high levels of anxiety at times, because essentially, if you don't know what the plot is, this is a very generalized synopsis description of the plot. It's basically about these giant blue kind of humanoid aliens who basically capture humans who are very small in this case. They basically capture humans and give them to their children to basically use as toys. And it's pretty frightening because just the thought of that is really scary. Really amazing concept. The visuals are fantastic. The animation looks really, really good. Some of the best animation I've seen personally. The style of animation was something I really, really enjoyed. I don't think I fully loved this, but this is for sure a film that deserves a rewatch, and I feel like I will appreciate it a little more on rewatch. Having said this, though, this was so this got the exact same score as Blue Velvet on Letterboxd technically, but I was more impressed with Fantastic Planet, so I think I might stick that right up in the A tier for now. Next up, we got Frances Ha. This is a film by Noah Baumbach, and it's just a fun, normal time. That's a really bad way to describe it, but Noah Baumbach's really, really good at kind of just making films about normal life, and Frances was very strange, very weird, weirdly relatable at the same time. The black and white cinematography was very good. I don't know if it was necessarily necessary to convey what they were trying to convey, but regardless, it still worked. I liked the story, and just overall, it was just a really heartwarming, enjoyable time. Frances Ha going up into the A tier. Next up, I watched Iron Man. This is a rewatch, actually. One of the few rewatches. It might be the only rewatch this month, actually. I think it is the only rewatch this month. And it was definitely good, but not anything incredible. You know, I'm someone who isn't necessarily the biggest like superhero movie fan, not the biggest MCU fan, but I like them. I think they're a good time. I don't think it does anything incredible in terms of filmmaking and, you know, like as a character study for Tony or anything to do with like philosophy or themes, but it is a fun movie. I have a good time with it. It's just a very solid movie that I'm going to throw up into the B tier. Next up, I have Judas and the Black Messiah. This was the very first film that I started in a Letterboxd series I'm doing called the 2021 Oscar Best Picture nominees with Mom. So I'm watching every single one of the Best Picture nominees for this year's Oscars with my mom. This was actually, no, this wasn't the first one we watched, but regardless, this is the first one that I'm putting on the tier list. I really, really liked it. My mom didn't like it as much. She said it had too much like talking and it wasn't cinematic enough. She didn't think like it was. She likes a lot of movies that connect with her personally and movies that look really nice. And while I think this was well shot, it's not necessarily something that's necessarily super pleasing to the eyes. But regardless, this is a story that really interested me. Some great dialogue, some amazing performances. I'm gonna have to put Judas and the Black Messiah up in the A tier. That A tier is getting pretty full, but don't worry, the next one not going in the A tier. We got Man of Steel. This was the one that I actually watched almost right after I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. But yeah, this was a first watch. I know a lot of people have praised this movie a lot, but a lot of people also say this movie isn't that good. So I was going in with basically no expectations, and I came out with a pretty solid, fun movie. I think that Henry Cavill does a pretty great job as Superman, Clark Kent, and just overall, I think this is a fun, pretty good kind of character study of Clark Kent, Superman. You know, we get some good backstory and stuff, and I think it really does work quite well. I think Man of Steel was definitely a good time, not necessarily like the best movie I watched this month, but it was definitely fun, definitely had some good character moments. Man of Steel going straight up into the B tier. Next up, I have Nightcrawler. Now, if you've seen my Letterboxd review, if you've seen my YouTube review of this actually, you'll know I absolutely love this movie. Jake Gyllenhaal gave a phenomenal performance in the lead role as Lou Bloom. The story was super interesting. It was very tense, great dialogue, really well shot, and really great screenplay as well. I think this is one of my favorite movies of all time now, so it's got to go up into the S tier. Next up, this was actually the first Best Picture nominee that my mom and I watched together, and it was Nomadland. Nomadland is one that is considered to be basically like the front runner for Best Picture. A lot of people think that Nomadland's going to win. A lot of people think that Chloe Zhao is going to win for directing. A lot of people think it might win cinematography. This is a movie that is on track to win a lot of awards, and while I did like it, this was a pretty disappointing one. I'm going to go ahead and actually place this one down in the C tier. So I have this at the same score as 12 Monkeys and as Man of Steel. But unlike those two movies, I was really bored during Nomadland. And as I said, same thing with BlacKkKlansman. It's not a bad movie. I would argue Nomadland is a really good movie. It's made incredibly well, it has a great score, direction, performances, cinematography. Everything about this movie is really technically well made. But if the film bores me, technical aspects can only take a movie so far. Once it gets to that point, it kind of relies on how much you enjoyed the film, and I just wasn't a big fan of Nomadland. You know, a lot of it was not very relatable, Not something I was interested in or would like to do ever. I would not love to live as a nomad. It's not exactly what I want to do with my life. I've never done it before, and it was just overall pretty boring, slow moving. And that's not to say I don't like slow movies, but Nomadland was just boring. It couldn't hold my attention. I have to put it down in the C tier. Next up, you can't really see here, but this is Old Joy, a Kelly Reichardt movie, and I actually had a really good time with this one. It was a very nature heavy movie, very quiet, very patient, and this, unlike Nomadland, quiet, slow, patient, but it had stuff that I could relate to. The characters, very relatable, great performances. The cinematography was beautiful. It captured the nature just so unbelievably well. This was a movie that honestly has lingered in my mind for a long time, and it really just doesn't do much. Like, it doesn't really accomplish much. It's not big scale, it's really small scale, but what it accomplishes really hits for me, and I think this is a movie that really resonated with me, and I will definitely revisit in the future, especially when I'm older. Old Joy is going to go straight up into the A tier. Next up, we have Promising Young Woman. This is the third Best Picture winner that my mom and I watched together, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was not impressed. I mean, the first half of this movie, I will say it was promising. No pun intended. It was definitely promising. It had some great aspects. I don't really want to spoil anything, but you know, the kind of thriller aspects were great. The relationship aspects were great. But then after the halfway mark, they kind of just threw all of that out of the window. In my opinion, I think what they were going for in terms of kind of social commentary and stuff kind of just got thrown away in the second half of the movie. The ending sucked. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I really was not a fan of Promising Young Woman. I feel like I was too harsh on it, but at the same time not harsh enough. Can't lie, I don't really know why this was nominated for Best Picture. I know a lot of people resonated with this movie and a lot of people really like it, but for me, Promising Young Woman is a D tier movie. Next up, we have Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon. This was my first Kurosawa movie, and it was, let's just say, straight off the bat, this is going into S tier. This was a masterpiece, phenomenal. It was so good, really technically well made. There was like almost no points at which I got bored. If I was bored, it was for like maybe like 2 minutes out of the entire runtime. But other than that, it was so brilliant in terms of technical filmmaking. Akira Kurosawa is one of the best directors of all time, of what I know. This movie definitely showed that. Very promising for the future of Akira Kurosawa's filmmaking and just filmography that I have to watch. I'm super excited to check out the rest of his works now because of this movie, and it had some phenomenal themes and philosophy, as well as some phenomenal technical aspects, and a movie that held my attention for the entire runtime. Rashomon overall is just straight up a masterpiece. Then I watched Son of Kong. A lot of you guys might not know that, about this movie. It's not very popular at all. This was actually an attempt to capitalize on the box office success of the original King Kong from 1933. They started production with the same team, same everything, but they wanted to make it bigger, but they had a smaller budget, and they had 10 months, but by the time they started shooting, they only had 9 months to shoot, edit, like completely in its entirety, make this movie in 9 months, which is absolutely crazy. But even given all of this, it's definitely nowhere near as good as the original King Kong. But Son of Kong honestly was a pretty fun and entertaining movie. I'm gonna have to give it a B tier. I actually really liked the movie. It was a really fun time. A lot of it was really stupid, but I kind of loved that about it. It was super cheesy and weird. I don't know, man. Son of Kong, by no means a really fantastic movie, but a lot of the stop motion and like fight sequences were actually improved upon in this movie. It was just a fun, stupid, cheesy time that I actually really, really liked. Then I watched The Big Short. I'm very interested in this sort of stuff, economics, business, all that sort of stuff. This was a really interesting movie to me. I think it was pretty well made for the most part. A lot of the cinematography was a little irritating because it moved a lot and it had like really like weird zooms, and it kind of felt like The Office in a way, where felt like it was almost like a documentary style in terms of the cinematography. But I mean, overall, really interesting movie. For sure, something that interested me, held my attention for the entire runtime. Just a entertaining movie, great performances all around. The Big Short, I'm gonna actually put this one up in, I'm gonna put it in the B tier. And then we got 2 more movies left. Next is The Father. This was the most recent Best Picture nominee that my mom and I watched, and I will say this one so far is my favorite. It's going into the A tier. It is almost an S tier movie. Not quite S tier, but it's going in the A tier for now. Anthony Hopkins just gives such a good performance. I'm still predicting Chadwick Boseman to win actor in a leading role, but I will say for my personal favorite, it is a tight battle between Chadwick and Anthony Hopkins. Phenomenal performance. The screenplay in this is insane. It's so good. And the way it kind of slowly gives you hints and builds up, and then at the end, when you kind of figure out what was happening the entire time, it's honestly kind of mind-blowing. Really, really good movie. I highly recommend you check out The Father. It's one that I was a little skeptical of because it's one that didn't get a lot of talk going into the nominations, but it was one that I definitely was not disappointed by. And last, but certainly not least, we have Zack Snyder's Justice League, the 4-hour operatic superhero team-up movie, done absolutely right. That's going in the S tier, man. I absolutely loved Zack Snyder's Justice League. I know a lot of people liked it a lot. I know a lot of people were disappointed by it. And I was one that went in with low expectations. I wasn't expecting to like it. And I freaking loved this movie, man. It was so, so good. Zack Snyder's Justice League was fantastic. Was not bored a single time. I watched it like all in one sitting, 4 hours straight. Best decision. I mean, really good decision on my part. I don't know what I can see why people would watch it in parts, but for me, watching it all in one sitting was very rewarding. I absolutely loved the movie, and this is my tier list. We got in the S tier, Fallen Angels, Nightcrawler, Rashomon, and Justice League. In the A tier, we got City Lights, Fantastic Planet, Frances Ha, Judas and the Black Messiah, Old Joy, and The Father. In the B tier, we got 12 Monkeys, Blue Velvet, Iron Man, Man of Steel, Son of Kong, and The Big Short. In the C tier, we got Black Klansman and Nomadland. And in the D tier, at the very bottom, we got Promising Young Woman. And this is my tier list. Now I will take you guys to the ranking. Let's get into it. Coming in last place, pretty predictable. You guys would probably know this from the tier list. It is Promising Young Woman. Unfortunately, I was not a big fan of this one. Coming in at number 18, I have Spike Lee's Black Klansman. Pretty boring for the most part, but had its redeeming qualities. Number 17, we have Chloe Zhao's Nomadland. This is one that, for me, the only reason it's above Black Klansman is because it was very, very well made. Number 16, I have Man of Steel. This is one that wasn't insanely well made, but definitely entertaining. Number 15, we have 12 Monkeys, a very strange, weird, grotesque, and very, very interesting movie. Number 14 is Son of Kong, definitely a movie that isn't super well made, but really, really entertaining, and I had a great time with it. Number 13 is Iron Man. This is a movie that, I mean, the MCU is just so much fun for me for the most part, and this is a movie that I really liked, and it kind of started it all. Coming in at number 11, I have Blue Velvet from David Lynch. This is a great movie, really well made, very interesting. Just, I like the other movies a little bit more. Number 10, I have The Big Short. Very interesting concept with some filmmaking that at times is a little distracting, but overall a very, very entertaining watch. Coming in at number 10, I have Fantastic Planet, a very, very interesting movie, something that's very unique, some great animation, one I highly recommend you check out, and one that I will be checking out again for sure. Coming in at number 9, I have Judas and the Black Messiah. Definitely one of the frontrunners for Best Picture, some incredible performances across the board, but just not one of my absolute favorites. Coming in at number 8, I have Old Joy from Kelly Reichardt. Some amazing performances, beautiful, serene, just a really relaxing and very, very good movie that I highly recommend. Number 7 is Frances Ha, a very normal and kind of just laid back movie about our character Frances. Really great performance from Greta Gerwig and just a really entertaining and very fun movie. Coming in at number 6, I have The Father, a very, very good movie. My favorite easily of the Best Picture nominees. Phenomenal performance from Anthony Hopkins and just a very compelling story. Number 5, I have Charlie Chaplin's City Lights, a very, very good balance of drama and comedy, one of Chaplin's best. Coming in at number 4, I have Zack Snyder's Justice League, a very grand operatic team-up superhero movie done right with some amazing character moments and phenomenal action. Coming in at number 3, I have Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon, a technical masterpiece, but one that I didn't necessarily enjoy as much as my top 2. A must-watch for sure though. I highly recommend this to anyone, even if you're not into foreign films. Coming in at number 2, I have Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels, a very entertaining movie, really well shot, super unique style to Wong Kar-wai, and one that I wouldn't necessarily recommend to everyone, but if you enjoy foreign films and very style-heavy films, I highly recommend this one. But coming in at number 1, I have Dan Gilroy's Nightcrawler, a phenomenal performance in the lead by Jake Gyllenhaal, something that was gripping, tense, and very, very entertaining from start to finish.